privilege to be up here tonight, and I'm on the parable of the unworthy servant. And when Pastor Ronnie told me I get to do this, it's been a couple months, I think, and for 2 months straight, I've been going in the house yelling, "Why does Ronnie hate me so bad? Why does Pastor hate me so bad?" This is hard. This has been really rough. So the parable that I'm going to speak on, preach on tonight is in Luke chapter 17, verse 7 through 10. And it speaks of 7. It says, "Suppose one of you has a servant who is plowing or looking after sheep. When he comes in from the field, do you tell him to hurry along and eat his meal? Of course not. Instead, you say to him, 'Get my supper ready, then put on your apron and wait on me while I eat and drink. After that, you may have your meal.' The servant does not deserve thanks for obeying orders, does he? It is the same with you. When you have done all you have been told to do, say, 'We are unworthy, ordinary servants. We have only done our duties.'" And as I think about, the whole being the servant of God, it's like, when I read that, I think that the master of the house, he can go do anything he wants to. Just imagine getting up. As soon as you get up, your slippers are there at your feet. They got it ready. You go through the house. Your bath is warm. You got a nice breakfast on the table. All the housework is done. Basically everything Rita does, except for, maybe the shoes. She won't do that. And draw my bath. She won't do that either. But as we go on to think about stuff like that, or fix me breakfast. She's just not a breakfast person. So, and then when you come home, everything is taken care of. You look out, your cattle's tended to, your sheep is all herded up, ready to go for the night. You come in, you eat, you drink, you go into bed. And the servant never says anything except for he is unworthy to be a servant. Because for me, to have a servant like that, it would never work for me, because I get up in the middle of the night and eat way too much. There's no way that could ever happen, because that's why I'm as big as I am. It ain't because I eat during the day. It's all I eat at night. Rita has woken up many times yelling at me. Her hair is matted together because she's got pudding or gummy bears stuck in her hair, or just... The worst one was the other night when, I don't know why I did it, but I took some mac and cheese from work. And it's really nasty. I mean, it's good eating, but it's not good, and it was ugly. And that's why I could never do it. But, back in them days, you got to understand, they had servants. The master had servants. And during this, As these verses go on talking here, it's Jesus telling, he's talking to the disciples. And the disciples are agreeing with everything he said. The disciples we are good. When he says, "Suppose one of you has a servant who is plowing or looking after the sheep. When he comes in from the fields, do you hurry him along and he eats his meal?" They're like, no, we're going to eat first. They're all happy with every one of those. But when Jesus got to number 10, he flips it around to then it's the same with you and I. When we have done all we have been told to do, are we just ordinary servants? Have we done our duty? It's just saying, we can never do enough for God. And as we do it, we think about all we've done. And this is why My notes are mixed up. I'm sorry. And during and then this. Okay. All right. Number 7. When we get into certain things, I jumped the gun on that. But anyway, we got to ask her, as we go through this, like on verse 7, it asks us, it says, are we doing all we can do to serve the Lord? It doesn't matter who else is serving the Lord and what they're doing for the Lord. It matters what I'm doing for the Lord. I can't compare myself to other people. I can't try to say, well, Lord, I do more than so-and-so does. Lord, I do more than they do. Just like Pastor Ronnie, he can't say, well, I'm up here preaching, I do more than anybody else. Which I'm telling you right now, there ain't a soul in here that does more than Pastor Ronnie. You may think you do a lot, but anybody take his messages or answer his phone for one day. One day, I dare you. You'll be balder than me or Jim. But anyway, and sometimes we get into that. And sometimes, I'll be honest with you, I get into that. Here's how I know that I have failed God so many times. This is one of the times. I think I do a lot around this church. I think I do a lot. I think to myself, God, I do a baptism when it needs to be done. I do security. I'm a deacon. I'm a sheepdog. I make sure this has happened and this has happened. And one time I didn't get my way about something. I got mad and left. I didn't leave the church like I'm leaving the church, but I left the service because I said, how dare them turn me away for one thing I asked them. I do this, I do that. And I really said this out loud to Rita. Because I was mad because I thought I do more than they do. I had no right to think that. And Rita was like, what are you so mad about? And I was like, they did it to you. It's about you is why I'm mad about. She just said, yeah. Yeah. And that's how we get caught up with that pride. Our pride will kill everything. I used to be so prideful. I'm telling you, my pride was killing me at all times. I remember, it's been a while. It's been maybe 4 years now. I marched right into the pastor's office. We had a meeting, whatever. I had my certificate of preaching. I had my keys. I was done with this church. I was done. I was no more because I let my pride talk me into some stupid stuff. My head talked me into some stupid stuff. Instead of praying and asking God how to handle this, I thought to myself, I want to be the master of this. And that meeting lasted, 10 seconds before I was crying, before we was crying. And, there was another guy in there, Eli. And if anybody knows Eli, he's a big dude. He's probably bigger than me. There's 3 big people sitting there crying, 3 big men sitting there crying because one of them was full of pride and didn't know it. And then we go into 8. 7, I'm getting ahead of myself. 7 means, and I swear, I promise, Pastor, I'll get this right. Number 7, like on 7, it just means no extra help. It doesn't say, suppose you have many servants in the field. It says, suppose one of you has a servant in the field. A servant, not many servants, one servant. And that servant has no help. He does everything that he's required, that God or his master tells him to do. He does it. He doesn't look around, and if God tells me to do one thing, I'm not passing it down the line. You know what? God told me to fill the baptism, but you know what? I'm going to have somebody else do it and let them do it. But still, I want the credit for it because I was asked to do it, and I kind of multitasked and let somebody else do it. That ain't how it works. When God asks you to do something, you need to do it. You need to take care of it. And in verse 8, it said, in verse 8, there is no time off. If you think about verse 8 as you read it, think about no time off. Of course not. Instead, you say to him, get my supper ready, then put your apron on and wait on me while I eat and drink. After that, you may have your meal. He has no time off there. From start to finish, he's got his meal. That's all he's got is his meal. From start to finish. He's by himself. He does it with no extra help. Now, in 7, he had no extra help. Now, there's no time off. So he doesn't have time to get on the phone, text, or whatever, gossip, do anything, because he's by himself and he has no time. He doesn't have time to sit there and say, you know what, I seen so-and-so wore that one dress and I saw, there. And everybody over here is like, hey, did you see that side of the church today? I'm glad I don't sit on that side of the church. He had no time to do that because his time was about one thing, and that's the master's business. So after that, I can't believe she didn't do that. And that was verse 8. And then verse 9, as we read it, think about no thanks deserved. He wants no thanks. The servant deserves no thanks. And it's the same with you when you have done all you... Oh, that's 10, sorry. The servant does not deserve thanks for obeying orders. He just does it. When I go to work, I know I have a job to do. Before I go in, I know everything I have to do. I know I got to get that smoker ready, and I know I got to get ready for the cashiers when they come in. I got to get that ready. I know my job. I know what I got to do. I do not need my boss coming in every morning saying, good job, Tony. Everybody look at Tony. He done his job this morning. He doesn't get on the internet, on TikTok and all of that and say, look, I have an employee that does his job, which sometimes around my work wouldn't be bad. But anyway, I don't need that. I do my job. When we are true servants of God, we do not need that thanks. We do not need that pat on the back. God has everything that he wants us to do. He knows what we need to do. God knows what is good for us. We do not need we do not need people to say thank you. Even though I do get a lot of thank yous for what I do around here, and I do appreciate it, but I don't need that. I shouldn't need that. I should do what I do because I want to do it. And I do want to do it. And reason why the baptism means so much to me, it's 3 things. 3 things. It gives me some time alone with Rita, which we never get along. I get to pray with Rita. But the most important, I drop a couple drops of oil in that tank right there, and I pray over it. Because I want, when they get baptized, when they do come up, I want that oil to cover them, to cover the rest of their life. Because the first couple weeks after you get baptized is absolutely hard. Because every demon, everything that they are will come against you because they do not want it to last. They does not want that baptism to work on you. And if you got a little extra oil on you, in my mind, it's going to help you more. It's going to give you a little bit more strength. I I got a letter in the mail. Actually, it was an email. Nobody gets letters no more. And in the email, it was telling me, it was from, the state of Kentucky. And in it was telling me, Tony, we've been watching you, and what a great husband you are. You are really making husbands look good. You've been paying your bills on time. You've been going to church. You have been absolutely good to your kids. You've been good to your grandkids. You're one of the best pit masters they are. We just think that you are just an awesome cook. I didn't get that. Even though I am a good cook. But, I didn't get that. But sometimes we expect God to give us them kind of letters. We expect, you know what, Tony? I'm proud of it. I don't know how God talks. I'm sure it ain't. Because I talk like a northerner and a hillbilly mix. Kind of like y'all, but no. Because we have a thing at our work called a smashed tater. That word just, ugh. And I won't even say it. I'm like, it's a smashed potato. And everybody's like, no, say it right. I will not say it right. I will get fired before I say it right. But anyway, we expect God to just say, you know what, Tony? You are rocking it. I see what you're doing. And I should turn my phone off. But God is not going to do that. He's not going to write us a letter. He's not going to email us or what? I don't know. You think they got technology in heaven? I don't know. I doubt it. But he's not going to do that. I mean, that's not going to happen. We will never get that. But it is my pleasure. It's my desire to be the best husband I can be, the best father. Like, my son isn't here. It's the first time I ever got to preach in front of my son. Went a couple of years ago, my son couldn't stand me. And he had no right to, I did nothing to prove him wrong. I was a horrible father. I did nothing to prove him wrong. But I contradict every word of it now through the help of God. But it's my desire to be a good dad, a good grandfather. It is such a desire to be a good Christian. I want to be the best Christian in the room. It ain't, and that's not pride wanting me to do that. It's I want to be it. If you know 10 verses, I have to know 11. If you go to church 7 nights, I got to figure out how I can do it 8 nights. I got to figure it out. I want to be the best Christian in the room because that's my desire. I want, like David, just after God's own heart. That's what I desire. Because I know as long as I'm doing that, I'm on my own. I'm with my walk with God. I don't expect help. There's no time off for being a Christian. We cannot take a vacation from being a servant of God. We cannot. We can go on vacation, but I've never been on vacation with Mother Ruby, but I really doubt if she ever goes any place that she does not talk about God with somebody. I really doubt it. There's somebody she's going to talk about God to. She was not take time off from being Mother Ruby. There's no extra help, no time off. And then I got to thinking about something, about humility in the probable highlights. The need for humility reminds us that even after performing our duties, we should recognize our dependence on God's grace. Acknowledgement that we are always in debt to Him. God owns us, but He owes us nothing. we think that just because we go to church one time a month, but that time a month we're watching it on TV, that God owes us something then. I've done something for you, God. I watched that one video, and in that video it said if you give your heart to God and if you go to church, that doesn't mean that. Watching a video does not make you a Christian. Even coming to church does not make you a Christian. You can live in a garage, but you're not a car. You have to live it. You have to walk it. Sometimes we get out of line and we think, well, I did this, God. I can never go back. You can slip up. But you got to get right back to by yourself with you and God. I'm not saying that Rita is not a great person to be a Christian with. We're not a great Christian team because we are. But my walk is my walk. Her walk is her walk. She does what God tells her to do. I do what God tells me to do. And the thing about it, we're always in debt to God. Always. Every time we get up, we owe God for another day. Every time we make it somewhere, every time I get into my car, I pray. No matter where I go, no matter if it's just a 5-minute trip or a 10-minute trip, because I don't travel long, I always pray, God, bless this car. Let this car get us home to where we're going and back. And Lord, let us have, wherever we're going, God, give us something good to say about you. Every time I get into the car, when I go home at day from the church, Rita and I will pray that prayer. Ask anybody that rides with us anywhere, they'll tell you we pray that prayer. Because I want God to be the beginning of everything I go, every drive I go, every morning. If you ask Nathan Brown to look on the cameras at work for 1 hour from 7 to 8, I'm by myself, completely by myself, 1 hour. And I do so much praying, shouting. I've been on my knees crying out to God on that camera. Because I want God to start my day off with him. I got out of that for so long. For so long, I got into just a groove of being a Christian. It was just a groove. I just did, all right, Sunday morning, get up, go to church. For Wednesday night, go to church. I got into a groove. And this is why I know I was in the groove. I saw a guy, and you could tell he was in need. He was an addict, and you could tell he was. And he asked me for $5. Usually I give it to him. I've never seen this guy before, and I said these words out loud. Now, everybody knows my past in here. I said this out loud. Get away from me, druggie. I said that. I was so embarrassed. I didn't even get into the doors at Kroger. I got so much conviction. I went back and I gave him $10. And he said, I only asked for $5. And I said, no, this is for me. The first $5 is for you. The second $5 is for me. And I'm sorry for saying that to you. And he said, I'm being called worse. So I started talking to this guy. And I gave him a number to where he could get some help. Whether he took it, I don't know. But I planted the seed because my pride and me thinking I'm super Christian, and I wasn't. Everybody knows my past. I was one of the worst drug addicts you could ever see. I was this close from being where he was at. I was one conversation away. Maybe 15 seconds. It took Rita 15 seconds to tell me either I get help or she gets a divorce. That's how close I was to being where he was at. And I thought, I was better than him. I really looked down on him. It embarrassed me because I had no right. And it has nothing to do with the money. If I didn't have it, I didn't have it. I still will stop. I still will talk to them, and I still will pray with them. But at that moment, I did not do none of that. I did not let my light shine. I was not alone. I was in the world where everybody else was at. Because there was people watching me laughing, and I thought, wow, I can't believe I did that. I hope they see me come back. And that's our duty. The parable encourages us to focus on fulfilling our duties, the obligation to God, rather than seeking rewards or recognition for our service. There's only one recognition, there's only one service, the only thing that we should ever rely on, again, and that's God's grace. Because it's God's grace that we're here. It's God's grace that we can talk. It's God's grace that we can walk. It's God's grace that I am not dead, or I am not out there somewhere, or, to be honest with you, I'm not in prison. It's God's grace. We have to get ourselves to where we can talk to God. And I can imagine that service. When I read that, and I've read that so many times, and I thought about this little bitty cottage. There's a big mansion here. There's a little cottage here. And there's a little fireplace, and there's a desk right here. And on that thing, on this little thing, on his name thing, all it says is, no thanks necessary. That's all it says. Because he don't need his master to call him by his name. He don't need his master to say, thank you, Tony. He just needs to pray. He just needs to work for God. You know, a shark, if it stops moving, it will drown and die. A shark always moves. It always has to move. And as Christians, we always have to serve. We can never stop serving. We always got to keep moving. I have seen other people, like I've seen Brother Jim, and he don't know this, at Walmart a while back. And lo and behold, right there he was talking in the produce, talking to somebody about God. And this was after church one day. There he was. He had no idea. He didn't know who was looking. He didn't know I was behind him. He didn't know whatever. And he didn't care. Because he was doing his duty as a servant to God. And we got to ask ourselves 3 questions. And then I'm gonna shut up. But these 3 questions is this. Number 1, is there anything in this church I will not do? If Pastor Ronnie asks us to do something, is there anything he's going to ask you, will you not do? Or is there anything God's going to put on your hearts that you will absolutely say, no, God, I will not do that? Is there anyone in this church I will not serve? You think about when Jesus was in the upper room there, and they was like, Lord, who's your best servant? Who's your best disciple? God, which one of us is the best? As they was arguing, Jesus, on the eve of him being crucified, went and got a towel, disrobed, pan of water, and washed their feet. While they was arguing who was the best, he showed them who was the humblest by washing their feet. And number 3, is there anyone in this church I will not allow to serve me? And you might think, you know what? The answer is no to all this. But if we're really a servant of God, our answer is no. We will serve anyone in here. We will let anyone in here serve me. And there is nothing I won't do for my church. Nothing. I pray every day for our church. I wasn't there when it started in the pastor's great room, family room of 9 people, but I was there in Woodbine when there was only 20 some or 30 some. And every Saturday morning, and I'm not saying this to boast about how good we are. I'm saying this to boast of how great God is, because he's got some servants in this church. He's got some servants in his church is willing to say, you know what? It doesn't matter who's looking. I'm going to cry out to God. It doesn't matter who's looking. I'm going to go pray for somebody. It doesn't matter who is looking. I will wash somebody's feet if God tells me to do it. We have over 200 people here every Sunday. This place is full every Sunday. And I'm not boasting that as in look at us. I'm saying look at him. Look what we're doing for God. It's everything we're doing this for God. When we pray, we're praying for God. When I'm up here trying to preach, I'm doing it for God. I want God. This is my time to talk to God. It's just like there's only one person in this room, and that's God. God is the only thing that you should work for is God. You want to be the servant, work for God. Because in number 10, it's the same with you. When you have done all you have been told to do, say, we are ordinary servants. We have only done our duty. It's hard doing your duty. There's been times when I've talked to Pastor after he's done preaching, and I'm like, man, that was hard for you. And he only has one response every time I say it. I gotta do what God tells me to do. And that's why our church is growing. We got people in here that is doing what God tells them to do. When it's time to get out of bed, it's time to get out of bed. I've never been an early riser. I've never been one to want to get up in the mornings, but Sunday mornings is just something different. There's just something different about coming and seeing this church. And as I close right here, and I really am closing, think to yourself right now, are you a servant? Are you really a servant of God? Are you doing everything God tells you to do? If God tells you to do it, are you doing it? Is there anyone in this church that you're not willing to serve with, or willing to serve you? And most of all, is there anything in this church you will not do? And if there's an answer to yes in that, it's time we pray. Because we have to be a true servant of God. He owns us, but he owes us nothing. He owes us no rewards. We're in debt to no rewards. God owes us. He is not in debt of any kind of rewards to us. Because God is here. God's with you. To be a true servant, you got to keep him with you. I love you guys. I am ending it here. But if there's something that you need to pray about tonight, if there's something you're missing out from being a true servant of God, tonight's the night. This has been one of the hardest things I've ever tried to preach in my life. If he'd have just said, come and preach about anything you want to, I could have done that a lot easier than preach on one subject. I've never done this before, and that's why I'm a mess. But it's still coming from my heart. And I truly believe this is what God put on my heart. Because God doesn't make mistakes. No matter what people say, God does not make mistakes. Because look at me. I'm up here because God doesn't make mistakes. I didn't just squeak through by the hair of my teeth or the skin of my teeth, whatever that says. I worked hard to get to be right here. I'm proud. Well, I don't know how to say it right, but I'm proud to be a deacon at Restoration Church. I'm proud to be a preacher at Restoration Church. But my number one thing about this place that I love more than anything at all is when I'm called sheepdog. That makes me happier than anything they are, to be called the pastor's sheepdog, because I know the heck that he's went through to get to where we're at right now. And to be called sheepdog makes me proud, makes me happy. I love you guys, but as I close, is there anything keeping you from being a servant of God? Is there one secret in your closet that's stopping you from being a true servant of God? Tonight's the night to let it go. Because remember, I'm going to say it one more time. He owns us, but he owes us nothing. I love you guys. If you ever need me, I'm always here.
Well, thank you for joining our broadcast today. We pray that it's been a blessing.